Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and I am coming at you from the test server to showcase one of these new champions here, CHAAGUR of the Lizard Men. I think he's a pretty cool Void Legendary with some cool things going on in his kit, so I'm going to be showing you how some of that stuff functions while I've got an opportunity to take him for a test drive and use him in a few different scenarios. So we'll show you some of the footage that I collected, and we'll show you some of the mechanics in slow motion and try to walk you through exactly how his kit is going to work, and then I will go over all of the grades, how to build him, where I would rank him compared to the other Void Legendaries, and all sorts of different ways to take a look at this new Void Legendary to Raid Shadow Legends. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so first of all, let's go over the kit here so you can get a base understanding of how this guy functions. We've got an A1 with a 50% chance that you can book up to 60 plus 15 is 75 chance of placing a sleep debuff for one turn. Now remember, sleep can be interrupted. You can you can wake them up when they are sleeping, so keep that in mind when you're placing the CC there with the A1. The A2 is going to be a multi-hitter AoE, which is pretty rare in the game, so that's definitely cool. We can book these chances up to 100%. The first hit is going to be placing a poison debuff for 4 turns. The second hit going to be placing a decreased defense for 3 turns. So think of the cool things you can do there with Master Hexer. You can get a 5-turn poison or a 4-turn defense break, and we can book both those up to 100% because you can see they default at 75, and then you get the 10 and the 15 if you're willing to invest 5 books into the A2. Then we have got an A3 that's going to attack one enemy while also attacking one time at random, and I will show you these abilities and how they look in game. If the target is under a poison debuff, we'll ignore shield, block damage, and unkillable buffs. So an opportunity to do things like Rotos, where you just blast through unkillable and different stuff that they have as long as you're replacing a poison. And we're going to grant an extra turn if the attack kills an enemy, so it's going to snowball similar to something you would see again like in Rotos, Septimus, things like that. Also reset the cooldown of Venom Storm, which is the A2, if the skill kills 2 enemies. So when we attack the one enemy and then attack once at random, if both of those are kills, we're going to lower the cooldown of Venom Storm, and that's super helpful because it's going to get you that multi-hitter AoE attack that's going to be coming right back off cooldown. And then we also get a passive instantly attack enemies with the default skill, which is the A1 that places that sleep, as long as champions or enemies are taking damage from a poison debuff placed by this champion. So I did test this out, and if you have something like a bad Elgato place a poison debuff, that is not going to proc the passive here and cause him to run in with the A1. When hitting enemies under a poison debuff, we will heal the champion by 10% of the damage inflicted, and that does work with other poisons. So if I have a bad Elgato place a poison, and he runs up and hits them with some ability, he is going to heal himself based off of that. So the first part of the passive has to be his poisons. The second part of the passive, when it comes to the healing, can be any poison debuff. Then we also get an aura to wrap up the kit of ally attack in all battles by 33%. Attack is not a super sought after aura, so it is good that it's all battles and it's not going to be as situational as it already is. Ignore the gear for now. We'll talk about the build. I was testing different things out, so this isn't like the build that I would recommend for him necessarily with the sets here. But anyway, for the base stats, the base HP is very low, so that's something to take note of, but the base attack is very high, so you can get this guy to hit pretty hard. The defense isn't bad, up over 1100 for an attack champion damage dealer, but it is over 1100 because his base HP is so low. And then we got the base speed of 100 and the crit rate, and he gets a slightly buffed up crit damage of 57 while getting 50 between accuracy and resistance. You do need to build this guy with accuracy because he places sleep, decreased defense, and poison, so you're going to want enough accuracy on him to get some value out of those different things that he is doing with his kit. But then if we dive into the gearing and building this champion, so he's a damage dealer. It's going to be similar mechanics to a lot of the other damage dealers, where Savage is really good, ignoring defense, Cruel, any of those lethal, those damage dealing sets to help you get value out of ignoring defense and inflicting high amounts of damage, getting 100% crit rate, and then as much crit damage as you can get around sets and masteries to help you ignore defense and really crank out the damage. Then we can talk about the booking process really quickly, and we've got the A1 with 4 books, the A2 plus 5 is going to be 9 books, plus 2 is 11, and then +4 is going to be 15. So that is a lot of books, but he is a pretty solid champion. But I did want to talk about this because this is really weird to me. This is feedback that I've given to Plarium about the test server, and I'm wondering about clarification on this. But we've got 4 books here. So we've got the damage part, which I understand because we're going to attack enemies when they take damage from a poison debuff placed by this champion. But what is the buff debuff chance? Like this doesn't like, I guess is this going to be buffing the chance of the sleep? Because you can get this up to a 60 plus 15 is 75. That wouldn't make sense if it's affecting the A1, like, because when you attack them, you're going to hit them with the A1. So I guess if the buff debuff chance affected the A1 sleep, but we get it to 75 and then we overlap it and we go to 85 plus 15 to 100, I guess maybe that's what it is. So we get like a guaranteed sleep proc as long as we have the accuracy to pull it off. But it's worded a little bit weird in terms of it affecting 2 different skills because of the counterattack. So maybe that's how it functions, and it kind of coincides with the A1 and the buff debuff chance of the but that should be noted in here. It should be like at the bottom there, it should say buff debuff chance affects the attacks that the A1 will be inflicting or something. So that's probably what it is if I had to guess on the wording here of the passive. But I have reached out to get clarification and confirmation on exactly what this passive is going to mean in terms of the buff debuff chance, because there's nothing actually in the passive itself that places any sort of buff or debuff. And then if we go under the masteries here, I can move myself so that you can actually see here. Okay, so like I said, ignoring defense is super good on this guy. And then obviously Master Hexer, he places a lot of debuffs. So I would give you an opportunity to screenshot this if you would like. But this is just kind of a general utility setup for masteries. I think that would work pretty decently on this guy. Getting the default ability 1 is nice because he's going to be doing that default ability a lot because of that passive. And you may want War Master or something if you're going to be using him in the clan boss, but these should be generally useful for him. But now I want to pull up some footage from when I was playing around with this guy, and this is going to be the multi-hitter, the A2. You can see it place the poison, then the defense break, and then you have the passive going off, which is showing the heals that he is doing. But I'm going to show you that in more detail. I'm going to show you a still so we can talk about that and you can really understand how that multi-hitter A2 is going to be functioning. And I'll show you the A3 here also after this dragon run so you can see how that functions. But what I did here was I brought him in a dragon run with some poisoners and some heals, and then I put him along Candrafon as the other DPSer, so you can kind of see how they hit compared to each other, and we can see at the end of the run how they are how they're stacking up. You can see there, considering the double hit, we didn't have Candrafon under the Veil, just kind of in a normal scenario. He hits pretty similar to a Candrafon, but Candrafon getting the big 40% boost from Veil, he would probably have a pretty significant AoE advantage in terms of like an arena nuker if you set up all the different qualifiers. But this will give you a chance at the end of the run to see how they stack up and kind of see his abilities there. That double hitter did over 60, which is pretty good there. So he can definitely nuke pretty hard and put out some damage, especially if you've got some ignore defense and a really high attack on him. He also places the defense break, which is super nice. If you didn't have someone like Lydia right here in the team doing that as well. And places poisons as well, which is going to be a consistent source of damage when you're trying to clear content too. And if I remember right, the damage output is pretty comparable to Candrafon in terms of how much they did in this run. And then after this, you get to see the A3 in action and what that looks like when it snowballs into an extra turn and all that. And I did speed this up a little bit if it looks super fast. I just wanted, you know, to waste as little of your time as possible. So I sped this up a little bit just to kind of show you him in action during this dragon run. But didn't want to speed it up too much so you couldn't even follow what was going on. And there we go. The dragon is down. And then when it pulls up the damage numbers, you see Candrafon did 1.35 and CHAAGUR did almost 1.6. So kind of outscaling the Candrafon there in damage. But this is what I wanted to show you also. We got the A3. It's going to hit one enemy, then one enemy at random. So I'm going to target the one on the far right, and then it randomly hits the one on the top left. And what that did was it lowered the cooldown of the A2. So now we can snowball because you can see it grants an extra turn and resets the cooldown if it kills 2 enemies. So what that means is you can really snowball and cycle through his abilities as long as you got enough damage and set yourself up to get kills, because now I'm ready to do the AoE again right there, right away after granting an extra turn. But I also wanted to show you a still frame of the A2 here because it can get a little bit complicated and it was a little bit hard to follow even though I slowed it down. So what you're seeing here is attack all enemies 2 times. That's why you see the 10 different damage numbers on the screen. You've got the 2 different hits of the AoE. The first hit placed the poison debuffs that you see, and the second hit placed the defense break hits that you see. So you can see all those poisons. We did get a 5-turn proc on the poison. Actually, I can bust out a pen and mark this for you. Okay, so here we go with the pen, and you can see here that it's kind of small, but it looks like this is a 5-turn poison and also a 4-turn defense break. So coinciding with the Master Hexer, we're able to get big poisons and defense down because of the AoE attack here. And then you also can see the Venom Storm above his head means that's the ability he did. And then we also procced the effect of the passive, which when you see the second half of the passive up there, it says when hitting enemies under a poison debuff, we're going to heal this champion by 10% of the damage inflicted. So he placed the poison after the first hit of the A2, which means the second hit, he's going to be doing a bunch of healing because the poison was already there when the second hit occurred. So that's why you see the healing numbers going up there on his body. That and then it's got the passive listed there, and that refers to the healing that's taking place because of hitting them after he had placed a poison. So I understand it's a lot to understand and how it works here and functions together. That's why I wanted to go over a still picture of it so you can really understand if you're building this guy exactly how the kit is going to be working in action. But alrighty, now for the fun part, let's go over the grades of CHAAGUR and how I would kind of rate him as a champion. So what you're seeing right now is going to be the tier list grades and how he is going to grade out when plugged into the algorithm of my tier list that does value different areas of the game differently than others. So we get an overall grade of 9.6, which is very solid. He's going to be very generally useful. I can set this up to scroll. So we've got the Wizard, Legendary, Void, overall 9.6. Book value of 10. I think if you're going to use him, he's going to be worth it because he's going to be amazing in Faction Wars. You can use him as a damage dealer. You can use him to snowball, grant extra turns, void affinity, clear content. So not going to be maybe the best legendary in the game, but he's worth books if you're going to use him, I think. Clan Boss 9, you've got the poisons, the defense break. Arena, I can't go like super meta, but he is definitely viable as a damage dealer for sure. He's a good XP farmer because of the snowballing, going to be awesome in the Wizardmen. Very situationally good in the Doom Tower, and then when we get to the dungeons, probably worse in the Fire Knight or the Spider, but mostly generally useful. Poisons are very good in the Dragon. I think he's going to be fine in all the keeps, but he doesn't really have any special mechanics to do really well in any of the keeps, like stealing buffs or anything, but he does have defense break, which is super incredible in the Force keep. And then let's go ahead and get him added to our Void Legendary tier list. I try to keep this mostly evenly distributed as best I can instead of having like a bunch in the S tier and a bunch in the low tier or something. I try to keep an even distribution, which makes it hard because you have to put champions low that maybe are pretty solid. So between only Void Legendaries, where would I slot him? Probably I'd slot him somewhere around Leorius. Leorius has the ability to kind of survive and get his turn off because of the unkillable that he can put on himself. But yeah, kind of in this soulless Ramantu Leorius tier as kind of a situational, pretty solid damage dealer who's definitely a good champion. So yeah, I'd probably put him somewhere like right there, in my opinion. Now, you obviously can let me know if you disagree, but my first impression of him would be kind of that utility damage dealer who's very solid and definitely a really good champion, and that's kind of where I would slot him here as my first impression of sliding him onto the board. So alrighty, that will do it for me on this one. As always, let me know where you agree and where you disagree because my tier list ratings are fluid, especially for new champions like this. Really enjoy hearing your input as well on subjects like that so I can try to keep that as accurate as possible. But anyway, he's a very new champion of the game, and I think Plarium did a good job for the most part. He's got some interesting stuff going on in the kit, and I think he brings some new stuff to the game and a fun role that he can kind of fulfill as a Void Legendary. So anyway, that's going to do it for me on this one. As always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.